Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Now in this week's video we're going to be heading to the Outer Rim and taking on some mercenary work as we look into the Mandalorian. Now before we begin, I wanted to start this video by putting in a spoiler alert right now before we get anywhere into it. I think this is probably the best thing to do because I will be discussing the events of Season 2 of The Mandalorian, in particular the finale and what it means going forward. And on that note, let's start by talking about how great that finale was. I mean, purely from a fanboy perspective at least. Just the moment that we got when Luke turned up in there's only one X-Wing, that was pretty epic when you cottoned on to what was going on there. And then he got that moment of badassery that rivals his father's own badassery in Rogue One. I think this was really cool, so was a lot of the stuff that was going on that was being set up with all the Mandalorians. However, as fun and as exciting as all this was, it did leave me with a few questions that I need answering. The first question I've got is, what is going to be happening with Grogu? And it's probably a question I'm going to come back to a lot in this video. You see, because Grogu was taken away with Luke at the end, my question is, where is he in the sequel trilogy? You certainly don't see him hanging about, and surely if he's as powerful as he's got the potential to be, he'd be kicking around somewhere. Now, the obvious answer is that maybe he was part of the the Jedi apprentices that got killed when the temple was destroyed by Kylo Ren. And while this could be a good explanation, it's a good way, I guess, of getting him out of the picture, it would feel a bit kind of lame, really, wouldn't it? I mean, the object of everyone's desires and sort of what everyone's trying to aim for, what everyone's trying to protect and all that kind of stuff throughout The Mandalorian, just having this death as part of the unnamed Jedi apprentices in Luke's temple would be pretty pathetic. And he's certainly not one of the Knights of Ren because they're not shown to have any force powers and none of them are tiny. Now, there are many explanations as to where Grogu could be in the sequel trilogy, why he might not be involved, and I'll get into them a little bit later. But I do think that there is this big question mark with the fact that Luke took him. Now, a lot of people were saying that people like maybe Sabine Wren or maybe another character from Rebels could have taken him instead of Luke, which I think would have been a better idea perhaps for trying to explain where he ended up after all of this and where he is in the sequels. But you kind of had to bring Mark Hamill in to have Luke, didn't you? You needed that kind of fan service there because anything else would have felt a little bit flat amongst all of that. Now, of course, the fate of Grogu could be answered by what happens next in The Mandalorian. Just because we've seen Mando give him away to Luke doesn't mean we've seen the last of him. It would feel really weird if the series went on without Grogu featuring because he was sort of such an iconic part of the series. If in many ways he was kind of the co-lead alongside Mando, alongside Pedro Pascal, which I think they do need to do something about. Somehow he will feature here. However, I think what's going to happen almost definitely in this series is Mando is going to join up with Bo-Katan and all of her Mandalorian colleagues and try and take back Mandalore. Now, I think Grogu could feature in this somehow, and I think that there are many ways that it could be achieved, and like I said, again, I will get into how I think that might happen a little bit later on. But it just seems like a very odd choice, and for once in The Mandalorian, we don't know what's going to happen next. I'm not saying that everything's been completely predictable, but at the end of Season 1, you knew what was going to happen next. You knew that he was going to be taking Grogu back to the Jedi. Throughout the entirety of the series, you've known that his goal is to look after the child, is to take him back to the Jedi, and now what? At the end of Season 2, we're left on this sort of cliffhanger and we don't really know exactly what's going to happen, other than he probably will go to Mandalore in some regard. Now, I'm excited to see what they do with Mandalore, and I can't wait for them to dive into some of the history of the Mandalorians, maybe touch on some of the big galactic civil war stuff that went on in the sort of Old Republic era, the stuff from Knights of the Old Republic and that kind of thing. It'd be great if they sort of mentioned a lot of that, because they have mentioned a lot of the war between the Mandalorians and the Jedi, which of course is covered a little bit, or at least is alluded to a bit in the Old Republic games, and so I would hope that they come back to that in some way, which would be really cool. And like I said, I think Grogu will feature because without Grogu, like I say, the show has kind of lost its other co-lead. Well, I mean, kinda. At the end of the day, I actually think The Mandalorian can function just fine without Grogu. The problem is, would they do that? And I don't think they would. At the end of the day, and it's something that I don't want to say this about Star Wars or about Disney, but Grogu is a merchandising tool, 100%. The demand for any Baby Yoda merchandise has been astronomical since his introduction, and they'd be foolish to get rid of him from this show. Like, even putting him into another show would feel a bit weird, and they'd lose a lot of their audience, I think. I think there will be ways that they're going to keep him alongside it. I don't think the relationship between Din Djarin and Grogu is over, not by any stretch. Whether that be because he just turns up occasionally to see how Grogu's doing, to see how Luke is training him. Maybe he sort of gets into a few arguments with Luke about how he's raising him and that kind of stuff. Maybe he doesn't accept the Jedi way and you get a bit of conflict there. But of course that would require us to see a lot more of Luke, and we don't know how much more Mark Hamill wants to be connected with the series, or whether he just wanted to have that cameo. We don't know that yet. Maybe he does, who knows? The other way, of course, is that maybe Grogu grows up a little bit, he develops a little bit more, and gets to a point where he's able to tell Luke that he wants to go back to Mando, which of course is also a possibility. Now, however they manage to do this, I think it definitely will feature somehow in this series. I think there is definitely one major way that he definitely will have some effect, no matter what happens, whether it's one of these two ways or another way that they keep Grogu in there. I think that there will be some separation between the characters. However, ultimately, I think in the struggle to retake Mandalore, when all things are looking bleak, when Bo-Katan and Din Djarin and all of that are sort of pinned down right at the very end, I think Grogu will come in and save the day, because it just makes a lot of sense. Now, another thing that I was wondering about after watching the whole of the series sort of play out, and then watching Disney's announcements about what's coming up next for Star Wars, it did make me think a little bit about The Mandalorian, and in a way, it's kind of been shafted a little bit. Now, there's a lot of love for all things Disney right now. So many new Star Wars programs, which I will be talking about a little bit later on, some of my favourite, most exciting projects that are coming up. So much more stuff for Disney and Pixar and Marvel as well that is all very exciting. However, I think weirdly amongst all of that, the sort of flagship property, The Mandalorian, that sort of set off all of these series, all these original Disney Plus series, has kind of been put by the wayside a little bit. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. When you look at what happened to all of the characters throughout The Mandalorian in Season 2, you've got to beg the question, who's really left in The Mandalorian canon? So many of the recurring characters that we really like might not be returning. We were introduced obviously to Ahsoka Tano, who is going to be having her own show. Also Boba Fett and Fennec, his sidekick as well, they're going to be having their own series as well coming up. Not only that, but even Cara and Greef may be featuring in the Rangers of the New Republic series, if that is going to be a thing. I'm not sure. It's possible that that's just something that I'm speculating on, because obviously that's kind of her new job. Maybe they'll be focusing on the other Rangers of the New Republic instead. And because she helped Mando with all of his stuff that was going on in the end of the series, maybe she won't be a Ranger anymore, and that solves all our problems. However, even with all of that, a lot of them are kind of gone, and you've also got other beloved characters from the series as well that are no longer in it as well. Even stuff like IG-11, played by Taika Waititi, who loads of people love, but he was out in the first series. When you look at all of that, who's really left? Now, of course, you've got Bo-Katan, played by Katie Sackhoff, and all of her Mandalorian friends as well. Of course, they're probably going to be coming back. Not only that, but sort of Mando's kind of cultish faction of the Mandalorians will probably feature somehow as well, even though a lot of them did die. But I think some of them probably will come back. And not only that, Moff Gideon survived. They've still got their big bad. He's just now in custody. Also, they did tease the idea of Thrawn as well, but I do think that he'll be mostly featuring in the Ahsoka Tano series, because it makes a lot of sense with her character, especially if you've read a lot of the sort of accompanying stories and comic books and that kind of stuff. He's kind of part of the Rebels kind of timeline. Ahsoka Tano does feature a lot with a lot of those characters, so it makes a lot of sense for that all to happen. Now, What I'm getting at here is that there's a lot of mystery, and I alluded to it earlier in the video as well, but we don't really know what the fate of the Mandalorian is going to be, and to be honest with you, I kind of like that. I kind of like not knowing what's coming next, and I think that that makes it a little bit more intriguing. I literally have no idea where they're going to be taking this show in Series 3. I vaguely have the idea that they're probably going to do something to do with Mandalore, but beyond that, your guess is as good as mine. And I just love that. I think that's exciting. Now, the last thing to mention about the final episode of The Mandalorian is what's going to happen about the leadership of Mandalore going forward. It's all very well if they take the planet back, but who's going to be in charge? And that was kind of alluded to in that last episode. Now, in the sort of lore of Mandalore, the Darksaber sort of shows who is in control, basically. It's a symbol of power, like the crown jewels almost. Whoever owns the Darksaber has the right to rule Mandalore. Now, of course, this is a bit of a problem because it is currently in the possession of Mando, and Bo-Katan wants it because she wants to rule Mandalore. Also, part of their sort of culture and all of that kind of stuff means that it needs to be won in a fight. Now, of course, it means that they could just have a friendly duel, to be honest with you. I'm sure that that does really make sense. As long as there's no witnesses around to say that it was faked or whatever, why can't she just take the sword? I know that there's a lot of problems with that. I know that it's not honourable and that kind of stuff, and many people point out that kind of stuff as well, but there is no real reason why Mando can't just give up the sword. Because surely that, if anything, is kind of an acknowledgement of her power. If he sort of kind of pledges his allegiance to her and gives over the Darksaber, then I don't really see a problem in that. However, there definitely will be a problem in that. There's going to be a power struggle between these two. That's probably what is going to happen throughout the next series as well. It's just going to happen. There's going to be a slightly foolish, slightly stupid sort of toing and froing between these two about the Darksaber and about how she can get it off him. Maybe she's going to launch almost a all-out attack on him or something. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a little bit frustrating, annoyingly. I think maybe they'll just team up, take Mandalore, and then they'll deal with this, or most of the series will have the struggle between them, and then eventually they'll resolve things and take Mandalore at the end. Whatever happens, I think this is probably the most likely outline of the series in some way, however they do this. Also, one more thing about that. Don't you think it's a little bit weird how Bo-Katan criticises Din Djarin's sort of belief in Mandalorian culture about how you can never take off your helmet and all that kind of stuff? She thinks it's kind of cultist and extreme and all that kind of stuff, and yet she's sort of held by the traditions of the Darksaber in a very similar way. Seems a little bit of a contradiction there, but hey, I mean, you know, these are weird soldiers who believe in higher things and all that kind of stuff, so who am I to question it? Now, that's all the speculation I have on The Mandalorian, at least for now, until we get more episodes. But before I finish this video, I thought I'd take a quick mention to sort of go over a few of those projects that I mentioned earlier in the video, some of the other Star Wars media that's coming our way, and tell you what I think I'm the most excited for and what's going to be good going forward. Now, of course, there's the projects I've already alluded to a bit earlier. There's the Ahsoka Tano series, there's the Book of Boba Fett, I believe it's called, that's going to feature Boba Fett and Fennec and all that kind of stuff, which obviously is quite exciting as well. And then the Rangers of the New Republic, which I don't really know what that's going to be like, but it sounds pretty cool nonetheless. Now, one project that I have been excited for ages is the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, which is I just cannot wait for it. Obi-Wan has always been my favourite character in the entirety of the Star Wars saga, and I can't wait to see them explore a bit more of his character going forward. What I'm especially excited for is perhaps seeing a little bit more greyness to him. However this series may sort of come about, I think he'll probably be mostly grounded on Tatooine because he's kind of there to look after Luke, and it would be weird if he left very much. And I think that in this sort of exile that he's going to be in, I think that he's going to learn a lot of lessons about himself and about sort of his humanity, I suppose, and sort of the kind of all the other aspects and the nuances of being a person rather than just swearing yourself to the Jedi Order, and I think that this could be really great as well. Also, I love Ewan McGregor. I did a whole video on all of my favourite Scots. That's up in the cards up here somewhere. Check it out if you've got a minute. Now, the thing that concerns me a little bit about this series is the whole Anakin of it all. Now, I am all for Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen being reunited and having them both together. However, I just think in the story of the current established Star Wars saga, it doesn't really make sense. Now, I'll turn your attention to a line from A New Hope where Darth Vader says, "When I last left you, I was but the learner, now I am the master." Now, this kind of implies that the last time they met was that epic battle on Mustafar where this happened.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground! You underestimate my power! Don't try it!
Now, because of this, there's a sort of... I don't know how they're going to put Darth Vader into this series. Maybe there's a possibility that although he's featuring, he'll be on a sort of almost separate timeline to Obi-Wan, and you'll see them doing their own things, but they won't necessarily come together much for it. Or maybe Hayden Christensen's not in it that much. Maybe he just features a couple of times, maybe only in visions or that kind of thing. I think that'd be a little bit disappointing after the big announcement that he's going to be featuring in the series, but I can't see how it's going to make sense. I have full faith that they're going to do it right, however they do it, but I can't see it yet. I just can't. Also, one other thing. Surely shouldn't Liam Neeson feature somewhere in this series? At the end of Revenge of the Sith, there was a conversation between Obi-Wan and Yoda in which Yoda said that he's been communicating with the Force Ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn, who had been sort of, I think, kind of the first Jedi in at least the known saga that had discovered the Force ghosting. Now, that would imply that Qui-Gon's going to feature at some point in this series as a Force Ghost to Obi-Wan, because he said that he was going to go off and study all of this technique and everything like that. Now, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he just studies the sort of lore behind it and the ability to do it and doesn't connect with Qui-Gon, but I feel like that would be a bit of a waste. It'd be really cool if at some point we just get even a small moment where he just has a little conversation with the Force Ghost of Liam Neeson standing there in all of his attire. I think that would be great. Another hugely promising project which has a lot of people very excited is the upcoming Rogue Squadron movie, which is directed by Wonder Woman's Patty Jenkins. Now, she said in her announcement teaser little thing that they did that she wants to make the best pilot film of all time. Now, that is a big claim. There are some good pilot films out there. Top Gun is one that comes straight off your head like that. Of course, it's probably the biggest pilot film of all time. And there are many more out there as well that are equally as good. If her claims are true, this film could be remarkable. Now, she said that because she's got a background with it, because her dad was an Air Force pilot, it's going to ground it and make it sort of the pilot film she always wanted to see, to sort of truly honour people like her dad. And I think that this film could be really good, really maybe grounded and gritty, and I think that that would be amazing. Now, I'm not going to mention every project here, but a lot of them really excite me. And just because I don't go into any of them here doesn't mean that I'm not excited for them. There's so many out there that I'm just thinking are going to be really good. Like the Andor series, the Lando series as well. So many of them just have these little bits about them that just make me a little bit excited. However, the last one that I'm going to fully mention is Visions. Now, the reason why I think that this is so intriguing is because it's so different to everything else that's coming out under the Star Wars banner. In a way, it's going to kind of take on the role of almost Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's going to be telling stories about lesser known parts of the galaxy, things that we haven't really seen stories about before, from characters that we've never heard of before, and by the sounds of it, each episode is going to be a self-contained different story, or maybe a two-part story or something like that. Not only that, but by the sounds of it as well, it's going to look gorgeous because it comes in a sort of anime kind of style, from a bunch of different animation styles as well, by the sounds of it. I think that this could be really, really cool. It's kind of, in a way as well, a little bit the Star Wars answer to Marvel's What If as well. It's going to be that kind of thing, the animated sort of accompaniment to all of the other Star Wars projects that are coming up. Now, I think this is super exciting, and I can't wait to hear some of the lesser known stories throughout the whole of the Star Wars galaxy, and I just think Visions could be a very exciting project if done really well. So there we go, that's all that I have to say about all of the upcoming Star Wars projects that have been announced recently. And not only that, of course, my thoughts on where The Mandalorian is going in the future. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here, and tell me what you think. What is your most anticipated project out of all of the Star Wars projects that is coming up? Not only that, what's your favourite of all of the Disney announced projects that are coming up in the near future? Please do let me know down in the comments below. Of course, as I said, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, all of that goodness. And until next time, may the Force be with you.